Sligo. And he brought me back tapes, and didn't he bring me back the same tape, you know?
Yeah.
And like I told him about, you know, and I didn't copy it or anything. And there's lots of people that I'd like to play it, that had asked me for a tune, you know, a few tunes. And if I had that tape, I could, you know, record it in, copy it. I'm awful sorry about it now, but I never will get it.
Well, here, Josie, we'll tell the people be listening to this, we're in the home of Josie McDermott. What town are we in, Josie?
Coleman.
In the parish of?
Giva. In the county Sligo.
County Sligo. What's your nearest town to you?
The nearest village is Ballyfernan.
And you've been playing the flute all your life, and as a lot of people know, you've composed an awful lot of music in your time.
I composed a few tunes, you know, and a few songs, things like that. I've been playing the flute for, I suppose, most of 40 years. I was playing a whistle it must be over 20 years before I got a concert flute. I used to play the saxophone before and tin whistle.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a flute. But I got one from some friends that came from America sometime, I'd say it was sometime in the middle 40s. And that was the first flute I had of my own. I got it from a friend.
How did you develop an interest in the flute? Was any of the family played?
No. My mother used to play the concertina a bit. But I never heard her playing the concertina, but she didn't have a concertina, but she had an old tin kid melodeon, she could play a bit on it, you know. Simple tunes, yeah, them old, you know, the old-fashioned melodeon.
Yeah.
She could play bits on that. Oh, now Joe Burke had nothing to worry about.
Is that right?
No.
He was safe enough?
He was safe enough, no. And, well, I don't know, I suppose the tin whistle, it was a cheap instrument, and you get it for sixpence. And I suppose that I just bought a Clark's tin whistle, or piccolo we used to call them that time around this part of the world. And nearly any time I'd want a piccolo, you'd get one for sixpence in Ballyfernan at the fair.
Yes.
They used to have standings on the street selling oranges and apples and sweets and whatever. Yeah. And they'd be always, I nearly never seen them without a box of tin whistles or pippolos or whatever you like to call them. Especially from October, November, December, you know, coming on to Christmas for the young lads would be buying them for the Randboys.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And was there a tradition of the Randboys?
Oh, the Randboys where we always went to the Randboys. I think I went in the Randboys 30 years without a break. For 30 years. Or maybe more than 30. I remember counting all the times I went, and I knew all the people I went with.
But was there one particular night for that, or were they going for several nights?
Oh, no, it was on St. Stephen's Day.
St. Stephen's Day, just the one day?
Oh, just the one day.
And was there such a thing as collecting money for it?
Oh, there was, yeah.
You would
that it was for money we used to go, it was nothing else.
I thought maybe it was more for the crack.
No, well, it might be for the crack in when we got big and older.
Yeah.
But when we were young lads, it was for the money, because you didn't have, there was no money around this part of the country that time, because there was no work. No work the good at all. And when I was growing up, there was very little work around until coming on to the 40s. Then the roads was repaired then after that. And
I suppose in the 30s times was hard round.
oh, it was fierce.
Yeah.
Fierce hard around here. Well, for anyone that didn't have a big place, we had only a small place, 2 cows is all we could keep, and my father was a cripple. He had paralysis, and I never seen him able to walk or work.
Is that right?
No.
Yeah.
And in our case, it was very hard.
Many of a family.
There was only myself, lucky enough.
Just an only son. Was at home. You never had to leave.
No, I was at home all the time. I used to work on when I got old enough to work, when there was work with the county council. In the 40s, there was lots of work then with the county council. The things started to improve a bit, and the roads were being repaired, and there was grants out of repair and drainage and that kind of thing. There's big drains or main drains that would be taking water away from bogs and through people's farms and all that kind of thing. Those grants out of that, and we used to get. It was only about the wages would be about. The lowest wage I worked for was 5 and 10 pence a day. 5 and 6 pence, but I wasn't long at it.
That was during the war.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was because I wasn't old enough. I wasn't old enough to work until about 43.
Right.
I got a card then, a man's card.
Yeah.
At 18. I was 18 and 43. And there was no hope that you could go talk about buying a flute or anything like that in them times. As you got the price, well, the necessaries not alone. Go buying a flute. If you mentioned about a flute, you'd be put away.
And when did you buy your first flute?
I got a present from a friend. It came from America.
And have you still got it?
No, I haven't. It wasn't a great flute, but it didn't be for a while anyway. Yeah.
To start on, like.
It was, yeah. Oh, it was a new flute, but it was no good.
No.
It wasn't. It was one of those. No. It was a wooden flute, but the keys were held on with little screws,
Right.
Yeah. It was a fairly modern, late to be made, I suppose, in the maybe 10 or 12 years before I got it. It was quite a new flute, but it wasn't good. There wasn't good timber in it. It was only a cheap flute.
And what about your next flute then?
I bought a flute then from you were talking that you were with the Hunts.
Yes.
Well, I bought a flute from the Hunts sometime in, I suppose to be mid-50s probably. I don't know exactly now. Sometime in the 50s anyway.
That was from Tommy Hunt?
Tommy Hunt, yeah.
Yes.
Tommy Hunt got a Bohm system flute, and a friend of mine lived in Gotchi, and he's dead now, lost his name, Ned Conlon. He told me that the Hunts had a flute. Ned used to play the fiddle. And he came from the next townland to me here, Flagfield. Well, it's not actually the next one. It's not far away, and it's only about a mile, less than a mile, as the crow flies across the fields, And he was living in Gotchi, but he used to come home now and again, and he always had a liking for this country down here. And there was a house down from me, about 200 yards away from here, and 150 yards across the fields. Butler's was the name of the house. And it was a great house for music, and that was the first place I heard the music. You could go out on the street there, around to the gable of the house, and you'd hear them playing, and the door closed even. Your butler's door would be closed, and you still could hear the music good. But usually, in every country house that time, they used to have a half door or a knit wire door, and the other door would be left open then, And you'd hear it away for miles then.
Yeah.
But all the musicians around the area used to congregate there and play at night. Come for special sessions, and there was a gramophone there. There'd be music there anytime you go to it. But this Ned Conlon told me he was interested in a flute, that the Hunts had a good flute to sell. He used to meet them regular, and he used to take them to places to play. So they brought the flute down to a neighbour's house not far from here, and I bought it. That was the first flute I had. It was a good one now. It's to be had yet, it's going well. I haven't it, but I gave it to a girl, and it's like, it's a good flute.
What sort of money was it that?
It was only £6.
What would you pay for a good quality flute now?
About £700.
£700?
Yeah. And you could pay a lot more.
Yeah.
I met a friend of mine, Mick Daly, from Worthing in England. He came from Arigna. He was a great flute player, and he's a good flute player all the time, but he's getting on now, and he doesn't play that much. But he told me he met Roger Sherlock. He told me this last year, that he met Roger Sherlock at a do in London, and they were walking down the street together, and he said, "Do you know, Mick, I bought a flute?" "Did you?" Says Mick, "I did." He said, "Ruddle and Rose," and guess what I paid for it? I suppose, says Mick, you paid £600 or £700. I paid 11, he said. But it's a real good one.
That's some difference in the 6 you paid for.
Oh, no.
Of course, when you bought it.
Well, I saw a good rose that was bought from a countryman near yours. Did you know John McGann from Dungannon?
Heard of him now, didn't know.
Well, John McGann got a good flute for Peggy McGrath. Have you heard of Peggy McGrath?
Yeah.
Peggy's a great flute player.
Yeah.
Well, she has a flute that she got for £5. About sometime about 68 or 69. You could buy them that time. But later on then they started to... There's an awful lot of Americans buying these flutes, and they never play them. They were antiques.
Just for
keepsake, that's right.
But I suppose that's putting the price on them up too.
Yeah, it is, of course, yeah.
Well, when we were talking to the Hunt Brothers yesterday, Josie, they were telling us in their young day there was an awful lot of traditional musicians in Sligo. There was musicians nearly in every house. Would you have found that there was more musicians when you were growing up than there would be now?
In certain areas, yeah. There was, I'll tell you now, there was an awful lot of fiddle players around here in our parish. I was counting them one time, but let's see how many I was in it now. Roughly around 24 or 25 fiddle players in this parish, in the parish of Giva.
Yeah.
And this is when I was growing up, when I'd be about, well, from 15 to 25 years. And in the parish now, at the present time, there's Tommy Flynn in the Highwood and Hugh Flynn. And they're very thin on the ground now. John Higgins in Giva.
Tommy Hunt was telling us.
That's all that's in it now. And they're a old stock that was there when I was growing up.
Yes.
Like John Higgins is about a year older than me. Tommy Flynn is a few, and Hugh Flynn is a few.
But he said it would be common enough to dance to have 10 fiddlers up on the stage at one time.
Well, Joe Dowd, did you ever hear of Joe Dowd?
I did, yes.
Well, Joe Dowd told me that you could hand the fiddle to anyone coming out of Killavil Chapel on a Sunday. Any person in the crowd, you could hand the fiddle to them and they'd play for you.
That must have been a great...
So it must be a great area now, there's no doubt.
A great area at that time.
Now it's very sad that there's no... I taught two girls, or I got them to get fiddles, and I sent them to a fella that used to play with me from far end of the parish. And to our hard luck, he died in maybe about 12 months after they started. But they could play a lot of tunes, and they knew how to play, like, he had showed them the techniques and all that. They were just getting into it when he died, and that they haven't played since. There's one of them a good flute player, then another one is a great tin whistle player. They both won the All Ireland for flute playing and tin whistle playing. But there was nobody to help them or push them on to play them.
To keep them
no. And so when they went to school, it was all right for they were going to boy, they were 18 or 17 or around that, when they'd done the leaving. But after they'd done the leaving, then they left, and one of them is in Dublin, the other one is in England now, but they played the whistle and the flute now and again, but no, never touched the fiddle. Because I was all out to get a few fiddlers about here. Now, Paddy Ryan had a music class in Ballyrush, and there's a few fiddle players around Ballyrush and quite good. That's the next parish to this now,
yes.
Riverstone parish. Some of them is in Riverstone, some of them is in the Corrigan or Ballyrush. Balnafad would be the parish, I suppose. Ballyrush is the wing of it, But the fiddle playing now is very thin now. There's lots of whistle players and flute players, fairly good. No, reasonably good.
But not near as many.
Oh no, not. There probably might be more flute players now. Young ones, that can play the tin whistle and flutes if they had them. But there's no fiddle players. None at all. None except them three that I'm telling you about now. I can't think any more now.
Well, Josie, when were you first recording? When did you make your first recording?
For radio.
Radio.
Flackhole and radio when it was going on. That was the first time I entered for. There was a competition on the Flackhole and radio for. First one I think was the first time it was flute playing. For the flute and whistle went together. That was it. And I entered for it or made an application, and I got to it all right. I had won. If you won anything major competition like an All Ireland or a provincial, well, I hadn't won the provincial. I hadn't won the All Ireland at that time. It would be about 64, 65.
Yes.
That was my first broadcast.
Uh-huh.
And after I had played there, then I got playing on Cayley House, and I got any amount of broadcasting after that then. Television and all that.
And what about the first record?
Oh, the first and last record was made in, I think it was 78 or He had it nearly most of a year, I think, before it was released.
And
It was released.
the record is completely with you, all tunes played by yourself?
Well, the tunes are all played by myself. It was Townie many years on that did it too, I think. Is Robin Morton, is he from Tyrone? Or is he from down? Of the Boys of the Law.
The Boys of the Law now from Anna, maybe?
The Boys of the Law, you know Carl McKeown, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's from Barna.
Yeah.
Well, this is Robin Morton. He was with them. He used to play the concertina and the bowron and some other kind of banjo, I think. He's gone from them now. But he made a whole lot of records. I'll tell you how the thing came about. He landed here one night. I'll tell you all the time and everything that was put into it now. He arrived here on a Saturday night and I was playing in Castlereagh. Excuse me. And he said, I'm recording, he was a while talking, he said, we're doing a recording on flute playing, a few flute players. I said, is that right? And he said, yeah. Would you mind playing a few tunes for us? I said, not at all. And where are you going tonight, or would you do it tonight? I said, I can't do it tonight because I'll be going in less than 3/4 of an hour from now. Whatever, it was after 6 o'clock when they arrived here. And when could I do it? When could I play the few tunes? So this is tomorrow sometime if you like. She said, would you be ready at 2 o'clock? And I said, I will. So I understood from the way he said it that he was, I said, who are you recording? I said, Packy Dayton, and you know, named up a few more that I can't think, you know. And I thought he was putting them all on the one record, you know.
Yes.
And I didn't care. I didn't mind playing a few tunes, you know. So he landed here at 2 o'clock and the dinnerette, and I was going oil in the flute. And he walked in without anything, and I said, where's your gear? Oh, he said, I have it set up, and that's square. It's in Carrick-on-Shannon, he says, of his studio fixed up in Carrick-on-Shannon. Jesus, says I, and where's all the boys that's going playing?
Yes.
Says, no one going playing on yourself, he said.
Yes.
Christ, says I, and I gave that no thought at all. Sure, I thought you said you were recording a whole lot of flute players, but I am, he says, too. But he says, it'll be another day. You have to do it today. And say, man, he's going on this record of mine, nobody on you. And I hadn't given it no thought that ever was actually. Yeah. I didn't even bother telling the lads. Because several people had said to me before that, would you be interested in making a record? And I said I would. We'll see about it. And they were still seeing, and they're all still seeing about it. But I said, anyway, BG, I'll do it anyway. He was the only man that really came up, and he said, what we'll do now, he says, we give you £100 now, and you'll get the 6%, I think, or something like that.
The sales after that.
Yeah. So he says, you can be thinking about something now going in the van. So the only thing I thought about, I said, well, while Coleman played the Shaskin and the Leafy Banks. Well, I said, I'm not playing the Shaskin and the Leafy Banks. I'm only picking them tunes at random. If he played the Shaskin, I'd put something else along it, do you know?
Yeah,
that I'd have a different.
Yeah.
And as true as I'm telling you the story, I started tunes that didn't Carrick-on-Shannon to put on that record, and I'd made me mind up I'll play, say, the Colliers and the Bank of Ireland. Well, I didn't know whether they'd fit after it or not. I'd come as far as it. Never. And that was I had the record. I was playing against that Sunday evening, and I said, "What time have you to be back?" He was bringing me leaving this house at 2 o'clock, and I said, "I have to be here at 6 o'clock to get something to eat for myself before I go playing." And I was here at 6 o'clock.
That's where going. You didn't make many mistakes in them.
Well, no. Have you heard the record?
No, I haven't heard it.
Yeah, well, that's the length of time now that was put into making the record. And you know, when I heard it all back, I could have spent 6 months at it and it wouldn't be any.
Yeah.
The only thing that had vexed me now, he was standing with the back to the fire there when he came with the cheque to me, and he said, did you mind I put a few bower-on bits into it? This is all the bloody same for that I mind not having them in it now anyway.
Yeah.
I had the records that sent me out half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
But I thought it was fierce mean of him. I don't care who hears it.
Aye.
He didn't consult me, and I wouldn't let Robin Morton play a bower-on with me because first of all the bower-on he had was like a butter box.
Yeah.
There was it was as hard as iron, you know.
Yeah. No sound.
No sound.
Yeah.
And I knew a whole lot of great bower-on players that I used to play with.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of an insult to them that I didn't use them. You know, when I was horror mad, though there was nothing I could do.
Well, that would have been put on the...
He put it on when he did record it with a small machine.
Yeah, done it off.
And they went to put it in on the big machine when they went back to the, you know what. And that was the whole history of the record now.
Well, you were saying there earlier that you entered in All Ireland in your time.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh, I used to play at the Flares all the way down through the years, from 1959 to the last one I played in 74. I won the flute playing in 74 and I never played since.
You won All Ireland in 74?
Yeah. I won the tin whistle and miscellaneous. I played the saxophone. I won the 2 All Irelands in Clonus in 64. And in 67 in Escorte I won the Lilton. But the only one thing I wanted to really win was the ballad singing, and I never was able to get that. I was second to Michael Hipkiss in Boyle, and I was second to some other one in Escorte. 3 times I was second in it. And that was the one I really wanted to win.
Was that the ballad singing or newly composed?
Oh no, the ballad singing.
Ballad singing?
Yeah.
And then I hear you do a wee bit of writing yourself.
Oh, I did a few songs all right. I did a few. But I never put them in for comment. Yeah, I did. In fact, the first one, I did a few bits of songs all right. It was what there was a competition for a new ballad about. They had one in Ballyfan now, a ballad about the O'Carroll country, and I did put in one for that. I won that thing. And they did another one in Drumshanbo. It was like Stalin the Beauties of Leitrim.
Yeah.
But that was a kind of a Kamalia, you know, it wasn't a traditional ballad.
Did you write one on Coleman?
Yeah, I did, but that wasn't for anything. I mean, that was just... I had 2 about sometime early in 1950. I decided I'd make a song about Michael Coleman. I was working out at the county council and or they were making a new road, or they were tarmac at him in the road out from Ballyfan to Boyle.
Yeah.
And we were working in a quarry. This is what put the thing in my head altogether. There was a few comical wags in it, you know. And I was shoveling from the crusher. It was a hard old job. It was 3 or 4 tools shoveling from the crusher. It was awful noisy and awful dusty and all that. And I don't know what... It was the man that was driving the crusher came up and he was talking to me. He was leaning in the crusher and he was telling me, he said, well, we used to have mighty fun, he said, in some places we were. And he's telling me about some fella around, I don't know where he came from, down about Killavil or down that country. And he never used to quit composing bits of songs about men that was at the crusher and men that was locals and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it gave me an idea, and I made a song about, the supervisor came on then, he got all the boys, they had a blast down, you know, in the quarry. And there was a whole lot of them in a cart house. And as soon as the blast went off, them all came out, you see. But there was another fellow went into a dwelling house not too far away. And he didn't come out at all. Some of the woman of the house was making soup and she gave him a mug of soup. And he was drinking the soup then and he looked out and he see the supervisor coming up to pass. And he couldn't come out, you know, while he was there. And the next thing was time went by and he didn't come out at all and the supervisor asked where was he? He missed him.
Yeah.
And anyway he came out and he sacked him. But he got back again after a couple of hours, I think. So of course that was I made a song about that.
I suppose you don't do any singing at all?
No, I haven't. Yeah. I've tried this, I was telling a friend there, 2 or 3 days ago or more, Dr. Gibbons arrived here with 2 fellows from Canada.
Yeah.
And he asked me to sing the song I made about Losterwell, and I did try to sing. Now, if he asked me in the beginning, I might have been able to make some effort, but I got a bad throat about 4 years ago, and when I do a lot of talking, I get hoarse and I couldn't sing. But there's no way I'd be able to sing now that it was presentable at all. You might be able to get it off the record.
You couldn't do one verse
in it? Shouldn't sound, it would be cat. Oh jeez, I couldn't stand it. Sound it. I'm hoarse now anyway. I mean, if I was didn't do much talking in the morning when I get up now and like at that end.
I suppose this is one of your busier days, Sunday. You'd have had a few up at Mouse.
Well, I'll tell you, yeah, but I'll tell you now what really puts me around the pier. Getting ready. Washing and getting ready.
The rushing.
Yeah, it puts me, I don't be the same I want to really sit back and I don't have time to do that, you see. When I get up and get ready and wash myself, the washing is the worst. Oh, Jesus, it goes awful hard on me altogether. You know, and I have to rest and all that kind of thing. I never thought that the like of that could happen.
Well, I suppose you get a lot of time now to listen to musicians. Who's your favourite flute player or favourite flute player?
Well, of course, God, I wouldn't, to be hard to say that now. You know, I hear such a fella playing and I think, well, nothing could touch that fella. The next thing you'll hear another fella, and he had a different style, but he was mighty good too. Now, I was listening to a flute player last night, playing on Killavil House, Conor O'Grady from Cork, and he's a duster. You know, he has a kind of an old Sligo style, like Larry McDonough or Tom Morrison, the records that Tom Morrison made years ago. He has a kind of a style like that. I love that style. I suppose you get fed up with it when you don't hear it that often. It's grand, I think. I like Frankie Gavin, the way he plays the flute, when he doesn't play it too fast.
Provided they keep it.
And I like Matt when he doesn't do too much craning.
What do you mean by craning?
You know, this kind of thing they do on pipes. Matt does an awful lot of that. But he does it very well, but I don't think it belongs to the flute playing. I'd some of the flute playing played straight. And I don't like too much ornamentation. I like just to hear the ornamentation that you know a man can do it, and that's enough. Because if you go painting a wall and put too many decorations on it, it doesn't look too good either when it's too well, and put too many colours on it.
Good enough way of putting it, alright. Well,
that's I think that when a tune is filled up with turns and frills and all that, it's not a tune anymore. It loses its character. It's no good. Well, to me anyway. Of course, everyone has their own.
No, I think
their own way.
But what do you think of the standard of the music now in comparison to when you started first? Do you think it's equally as good now? Or?
Yeah. No, I don't think. Well, to me anyway. I don't think that it doesn't sound as good to me, because it's played it's played too fast, and they're inclined to over ornament it. There was a young girl here, she came up to play her tunes for me. She was going playing at the Flay. And there's no doubt about it, she had mighty command of the flute. But she put as much into the tune now as that she knew she have to slow down for to get all these whirls and into it, and the turns and what have you. And I'm certain, I didn't hear who won now or what, but I'm certain sure she got nothing. And she's a great player. But she has far too much ornamentation in it. Now, there's an awful lot of whistle players, and they're powerful. They're great. But I thought when I heard Mary Bergen playing in a Scotty when she was only 16 years, I couldn't understand how she was able to get so much into it. But now, the girl that was here was putting in as much and a half into it as Mary Bergen was doing. Mary Bergen still sticks to the tune, you know, the basic tune, but she's able to put in these things so nice and so neat, and it doesn't crowd the tune or doesn't take away from the tune. She's still the best. Though I've heard several whistle players now that does a lot more with the tune, but it's not as good. When I was growing up, the type of tunes those played around here was something like the Bank of Ireland or Hand Me Down the Tackle or Binny Picking Cockles. Them kind of tunes. Or to hear an old-fashioned flute player playing them, or a fiddle player either. To hear them playing, and it was beautiful to listen to it. Besides, and it had character, and you know there was a great set on it altogether, and the beats were belted out. Yeah. Now you get a fella he's finishing up on a flurry or a roll or something like that, and it's all knotted into that, and there's no set on the tune at all. That's my what I think, but I'm old-fashioned, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally enjoy listening to hornpipes, and most players now. If you have hornpipes, was that always the case?
That always was the case around here.
Was it?
It was all reels, more reels.
Reels and more reels.
Reels and more reels, yeah. Now, of course, it's altogether different down along these coasts. They'll play a lot of hornpipes. And then as you go further down, then it's polkas.
Polkas, polkas and slades.
That's right.
Did they come home much of Michael Coleman's records around here?
Well, they did. They did a lot now. But I heard he made records that never came around this country, but there came a lot of them. Because In 1936 we got a gramophone. And one of the old-fashioned ones, you know. Torsion one was a horn on now because they were gone before, were out before that. This was just an ordinary box.
Yeah.
And we got some of Michael Coleman's records now, and they were lovely. But there was an aunt of mine that had them for 20 years before that. And we got a lot of records from her. And she had older ones of Michael Coleman's that had been sent over, I suppose, in the mid-20s or around that, you know. And they were very nice, but they were well worn, you know.
Yes.
Sorry?
Do you still rate him as one of the all-time
Oh
greats?
yeah, oh yeah.
No doubt about that.
Oh no, he's still way out there on his own now. He had, his musical taste was much better than the Sean Maguire now or any of them fellas. Yeah, you know, he put a lot of ornamentation, and I'm sure he changed the tunes a good bit.
Yeah.
But he never went away from the basic tune, and his ornamentation to my ear was very good in comparison with what I hear now.
Yeah.
Because an awful lot of the young whistle players and flute players, they go out of key to get when they're going doing these kind of things, and an odd time to go out of key. And I hear another fella, or I heard a few of them at it, going up into the third octave. And I don't think there's any need for that, because you can play the tune without going near the third octave at all. And there's an awful lot of them, if they played all those in the two, they'd be all right.
You've written a few tunes yourself, Josie?
That's right.
Would you have an idea how many you've written earlier?
About 10 or 11,
10 or 11?
I'd say around that now. About 10 or 11.
All reels?
No, there was 2 slow A's on it, and there was a jig, and a kind of a plank stay. And the rest of them was reels. I'd say around 10 or 11 now.
Well, what would you get your inspiration from? Just
I never could, except there was something, I never could just sit down and compose a thing without, I'd have to have some goal, or it would have to be about something, or to commemorate something. I could never do it like that. The first tune, or to Michael, I was going to tell you about the Coleman. I made 2 verses about Michael Coleman, and then it went on for 5 years, and I never was able to put any more to it.
right.
And I was going to the bog for a load of turf, and I had to go way down to the main road and through Ballyfern and away around the other side of it. It's about 5 mile, anyway, 6 mile to the bog from here.
Yeah.
To go the road, you know, up to Cresnair Bog where I was going.
Yeah.
And when I was going through the town, the man at the post office came out, and he said, "There's a message here for you." And he called me, and so I went, and he said, do you know a fellow called Alfie Banks? I says, "I do." Well, he rang, this was on Friday, he rang to see would you sing at a concert in Ballymote Sunday night, if you're not playing anywhere.
Yes.
And I said I would. Well, he says, "I'll ring him back and tell him it's all right, and there'll be a car sent out for you." And I says, "Okay." So I went out and sat into my car, and it was going off. And when I was going out at the chapel, 100 yards out below the town, I said, "Geez, what an awful pity I didn't finish the song about Michael Coleman, and that'd be a great place to sing it." I was thinking about it anyway, and, you know, going all day, so I knew where she had to go, and she kept going along. And anyway, I was just framing it up, you know, blends of verses and starts of verses and things like that on my way to the bog. But anyway, when I got the load on and got up on the cart coming back, I had this about 8 verses more put to the song before I was at home.
Yes.
And I kept practicing it then, and I sang it in Ballymote at the concert, and that's how that came about. Then, of course, the next song I did was, of course, I made several songs up when we were working out on the road, but that was to get away from the crusher. I started making up bits, and the fellow went away from me. And I used to call the gang, and I'd sing these little bits for him. The fellow that was sacked and all that. And they couldn't hear me with the noise of the crusher.
No.
He says, "Will you ever come up and go throwing out like these stones here?" Yes, I will, says I. They brought me, I got away from it anyway. And I was making little verses now and again, and I made several songs, but you couldn't be sung any other way. No, because it was all about the local people, you know. It was just for the fun.
For the fun.
Yeah.
Did you write them down?
Oh, no. Oh, Jesus, no. There was one song written down all right, and it was really the best song I ever composed. I had some mighty lines in it altogether. And the woman that wrote it is dead now, and it was in the house, and I was intended to get it, you know, to have it. And the thing happened all right, you know.
Yeah.
Well, a certain amount would happened.
Yeah.
The crowd was went to a dance in Boyle. And you know, butlers here on the side of the Boyle as you go
I
in.
do, yeah.
Mickey Butler used to have a boar, you know, a male pig.
Yeah.
That's what we called him, boar.
Yes.
And he had 2 or 3 fine daughters as well as the boar. And there was a fellow with us, a nice young lad, he was about 17 years, wild. And he went off with this one of the butlers. Before us, he told us he was going, that he'd be out the road waiting for us when we'd be going home. So anyway, he went out with the lassie, and there was some other fellas that he seemed to, was some fella going for anyways, and he ganged up. He didn't want your man. As soon as he went away outside the town, they made after him and they ran him anyway home. And he got on his bike when he saw the crowd waiting. He didn't wait to see what was going to happen. He cleared. And of course he told us the story. He was waiting out at the Rockadome for us when we came on, and he told us the story of what happened. And there was a long house nearly where we turned out here from Boyle, at the where the Curly was there.
Yeah.
There was a long house on the fair side of the road from us as you go in, and a big picture of John Player on it. You know, it was life size.
Yeah.
That was there for years. I don't know whether it's there now or not. But anyway, John Player figured strong in the song. And I made a song about your man getting the slip with the... But I made out it was the boar that followed him. And that John Player came out and stopped him.
Yes.
And only for John Player to be trouble. Well, I don't know how it came to me, but it was powerful. I never was able to put words together like that begin.
Yeah.
Oh, but sure, Jesus, I couldn't sing it, or his mother and father had go out of their mind, and if any of them heard about it. We used to have it for ourselves from the crack of rise, you know.
Probably people would have recorded it, Josie.
Oh, well, they probably would if they had it, but believe me, there wasn't. Well, I did hear another song that I made, the one I made about the road. There was a strike, and I made one about the road, and didn't I hear it on a tape in about 25 years after, where a fella sang it beyond in England. And they said the fella had it home with him on a tape. But like there was nothing serious on that one, like it was just about the road and all that kind of thing. But there'd have to be something like that before I could do anything. Now I did 5 or 6 plays, but I never was able to do them. It was really about coming on to the time that they want to be rehearsing them. I just couldn't do it. I often they'd ask me in 6 months' time or 12 months' time would you do a play? Would say, might ask me in March at the quarters meetings, you know.
Yeah.
Would I do one for the following winter? And I'd be fully intended to do it, you know, and it would go from one day to another, and I never would be able to do it until they'd ask me again how I had done. And they were ready to go rehearsing.
Aye.
So I had to get down to it then, and then I could do it then.
Well, here, Josie, I could see how you got your inspiration for writing songs, but what sort of inspiration would you need for the write a reel? What did you need?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you now the history of a few of them. It was an accident how the first one happened. Look, I used to be down in Sligo on Alfie Joe Dineen's. We used to, you know, Alfie
I
Joe.
do very well.
Alfie Joe and I played on a band for about 15 years, a modern band,
Yeah.
modern dance band. And then he was living down in Sligo, and he was playing with the Coleman country at this time. And Peggy McGrath was staying in, she was working with CIE, and she was staying in Alfie Joe's.
Yeah.
And she was a great friend of mine because I used to play on a band with a cousin of hers, and she was playing it when she was young.
Yeah.
But it was me actually got the digs for her in Alfie Joe's. So Patsy McKeon in Ballyferrin, he's a bow-on player and he's a bit of a broom dancer and what have you, a bit of a character. He was going with the wife. Now she was called from Donegal, and she was working in the Imperial Hotel, just not too far from Alfie Joe's. And he was going down on a date. He said, would you ever come down when we'll go to Alfie Joe's for a tune? I says, I don't care. So we did. And they were practicing, they had a Cayley House engagement, the Coleman country, and Peggy was doing a solo. She was playing with it was drumming she was. And she had a lovely selection picked up for the regulated for the solo she was doing. And she played them for us, and Patsy was greatly taken with one of the tunes. Right, in 3 or 4 days after I was going to Ballyferrin, and I go across the fields from here now down, straight down there and out on an old road over half a mile or 3/4. And I passed down by McKeon's home place. And I'm going there since they came to it about 45 years. And I went into my Tierans and Patsy was there, and there was a tin whistle on the window. And after a while I just took it up and Patsy said, "Do you know what you do? Play Peggy's tune." Now there was a sister of his there, she's Mrs. Sheridan, and she knew all the tunes. General run of them, you know.
Yeah.
She didn't play, but she knew the tunes. And before I had time to say anything, she says, "Did Peggy make it up herself?" "She did," says Patsy, before I had time to say anything, you know. Well, I knew then there was no sense in playing the reel that Peggy had picked, because the Polly didn't know what it was called, and he'd always never would tell them the truth. He was always skinning lies to the sisters. So I started fiddling with the whistle, and it formed into a tune after a while, and she thought it was great. And I called it Peggy McGrath, and that was the first tune that I composed. It just happened like that now. It was an instant reel.
Well, tell me this, Josie, had you any trouble remembering it the next day? Did you still
No, because I kept playing it in McKeown, and I got it off, and after a while it was. Though I had an awful job to play it when I was only for Carl McCall. I wouldn't go on the record because I couldn't think of it.
Yeah.
It was gone for years. Then I composed. The next one I did was a trip to Birmingham. I was in Birmingham, adjudicating the All England flag. I was doing the flute and ballad singing. And when I was coming back, they said to me, "You'll have to do a song about this now," or something like that. So I made a tune. I called it "The Trip to Birmingham." But I made another one. Then it's the name of the record, the LP. They called it. It's Derby's Farewell to London.
Yeah.
That was the name of the reel.
Marcus O'Murray plays that.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, the first play that I did was called Derby's Pooch. And the man that played the part of Derby was May Hart's father, Tom Hart. Big, strong man and a gas man. So he was invited. Patsy Handley and myself and Tom Hart was invited over to England to a court to stew in 1972, I think it was around that. Doesn't matter anyway. Way back. And we weren't in any hurry going. Tom picked me up, and we went up and we picked up Patsy Handley in Strokestown. We had tea in some of the places, Kinnegad. When we landed above, we got in behind a big truck within about 15 miles of Dublin, and it took us about 2 hours and a half to get as far as the airport. And the plane that was to bring us to Birmingham was gone a half an hour at that time, or more. And we missed the plane. So we got the last plane out that was going to London. And we landed in London. And we tried to get things straightened out there. See, I'd have to have a drink now. This throat has gone. We arrived in London, and of course we had never got it. We were going over to Dr. Laurie's. We were going to their house. They were to meet us at the airport, and we were going to their house. And the court to stew was in some big hotel in Birmingham. But we never bothered asking where was it, you know. So we arrived in London, and Patsy says, "I'll ring the lorries and tell them that we're here and that we'll be going down on a train or a plane or something." So when he rang lorries, there was no one there. We were a good bit delayed, you see.
Yes, yes.
They were gone to the do. When they met the plane, all right. And John Keenan was on it, and Seamus de Bruyne. And they asked about us, and they didn't see us. So they came to the conclusion there was something wrong, they weren't coming. So as soon as they were ready, they brought them home and had the tea and lorries and went off to the hotel then to have this party. So of course, when Patsy rang the house, there was no one there. And he didn't know help what to do. Then so he started ringing friends that he knew. And he's an awful way, you know, and he rang one house, and those children that answered the phone.
Yes.
And I could hear him, who was there? Patsy Handley. And who was Patsy? But you know the fella that keeps the running pig. To hear that whore, says Tom Hart. Tom was raging. When we missed the plane, Tom was on for coming home, you see. He didn't want to go at all. That it was deafness going to London. And he was real vexed. And I couldn't care less. Something was saying to me, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I knew, even when we landed in Dublin and the plane long gone, I had no hesitation but who were going to make it. I don't know in hell how it was, but I had that feeling. So anyhow, it must be in 1942 because, or whatever, or 72. It was the time there was bombing in London about 2 days before that. And at the same time, Cosgrove was the Taoiseach, and he was over trying to negotiate things and get things sorted out. And the airport, London airport, was alive with what do you call them, crowd from Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
Big men about 6'3" and 4", and they were walking around, you know. And the Dubliners had a song going at the time, or I used to hear it, "Me couple of sticks of jilly, night I'm here on the alarm clock." Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember it.
And I started singing this around to Tom Hart's there going round the world. Jesus sake, when you shut your mouth, we'll be arrested. And I'd be delighted if they came up and said something to us. I didn't think things was as serious as they were, you know. Anyhow, Handy came out and he said, he found out, he got Paddy Ryan. Paddy was in London at the time, or in Birmingham. And he got Paddy somewhere. And Paddy told him where the hotel, the name of the hotel where the crack was. So we got a taximan in to bring us to the Euston station that we'd get a train down. Planes were gone. No plane to Birmingham. And Jesus, when we landed, it wasn't the last train going. There wouldn't be going another one until 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Last train was gone. Well, it was fierce now with the language, and Tom Heston was a mighty goose, man. Anyway, we went out and we made a bargain with a coloured taxi man, black as soot. And he brought us down for £20 to Birmingham from London.
That would have been
It was reasonable. We gave him a few pounds along with that.
Yeah.
Now, to go back to the first play I wrote was called Derby's Pooch. And Tom Hart was the man that played the part of Derby. And he was, the mall around Keija used to call him Derby after this, you know.
Yeah.
And there's any amount of people down the north now that comes to the Gormanstown and to the Flays. And Patsy Handley, anytime you met him, Patsy Dollars introduced this is Derby. And they do say, well, Derby, and they're sure that that's his name, you know.
Yeah.
And Tom's wife does enjoy this, and Tom doesn't give a fuck what they call him.
Yeah.
But anyway, when we're going down to the taxi, well, says Patsy, yes, surely to Christ, I have a good story now for a song or a tune or something. And on the way down, I made a tune I called it Derby's Farewell to London. And at the same time, Derby was putting strings of bad language out of them, and you wouldn't put it down in a copybook. If it was as big as from here down to the bridge. But we arrived, and the dinner was over, but we were there in time for what we were sent for, to do our playing, and we didn't give a damn, we weren't hungry. And we had a mighty weekend, great crack altogether, and that was the story, how that tune came about. I think there was some sort of a story attached to them all now. I made it, the jig I made, I called it Dominick's Farewell to Cashel. Dominic Cosgrove and myself and a few more went to Cashel to the Flay in 1969. And when we were coming back, Dominic is a wag too, you know.
Yeah.
When we were coming back, well, they noticed, Dominic, no, I'm very sorry that we come home mighty sober men and all this, you know. He was driving away at 30 or 40 miles an hour and all this chat going on. He says we behaved badly that didn't break a window or do something anyway.
Some of them were.
To mark the occasion.
Yeah.
And he didn't mean a bit of this, and he trying to rise, there was 2 kettles in it, and he was rising them, you see. So anyway, they suggested that I could make a song about it, or a play or something like that. So I made the tune on the way, just at that minute, from that on to long before, I had it done long before we were at home, a jig, and I called it Dominick's Farewell to Cashel. So I think
Patsy Hanley must be a great character to be out with, is it?
Patsy is mighty gas.
Is
He was.
he a guard?
No, he's an engineer.
An engineer? I always
Yeah.
thought he was a guard.
No, he's an engineer in Roscommon County Council.
He has a great sense of humour, seems.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, Patsy wouldn't, the wilder and the toughest and the most disappointing it would be, that's when Patsy'd enjoy. You know, if there was someone getting vexed.
Yeah.
If there was some other one getting vexed. He was great fun.
What time do you go for your dinner at, Josie?
Around 1.
Oh, around 1. We're keeping you there.
Before we go, Josie, you have a pin here on the wall. Portrait of yourself.
That's right.
Give us a wee bit of a history of it.
Pardon?
Turn it around. Tell us what the history of it is.
Just tell us who did it.
Who did
Oh,
it?
Bernie Madonna. His name is on it there. He's from Sligo. He asked me if he could do a painting about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And well, I said, I'm not interested in the painting, because I wouldn't see it, and there's no good in you doing one for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested.
It's Loch Arrow in the background, isn't it?
No, it's La Melia, behind at Losser. So he said he wanted to do one anyway, that he'd like to do it. And I said, that's okay, but I'm not paying for it,
Yeah.
because I don't want it. So he insisted on doing it anyway. So, of course, now there was a method in his madness, you know. He knew there'd be a lot of people coming here, and there was children, there was a lot of young ones coming learning music. And most of them got their pictures done.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of musicians that I know too. And
You're a good painter, isn't
he's supposed to be very good.
He's supposed to be an international.
He is, yeah. He has galleries in America and different places. Mm.
Well, here, Josie, it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Oh no, it's
Very sorry for keeping you late.
not at all. Sure, what time is it now?
It's about, what would it be, 25 past
No,
one?
that's not bad.
20 past one.
If I didn't get hoarse, I'd be all right there.